Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. We are here today because it is now February, and once we hit the new month, it means we go over what I read this last month. So this is my January wrap up, and I read 15 books. That is the most books I've ever read in 1 month in my entire life. That's more books than I used to read in a year, and I read them in 1 month. Ooh. So I would love to get to 125 books in the year. And if I keep this up, I will by sure bypass that. So let's talk about what I read. I have a few rereads in here, and I have a few new reads, a couple of older books, and then some smutty romance. Well, smut-ish romance. It's not like smutty, but it's still got some in it. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm just gonna start off the top and work my way down. I, by the way, have a new cover of this book, which I will show you next time I do a book haul, which I should probably end up doing one fairly soon, probably in the next week or two. But when I do, this is what I got for Christmas. I got the UK Canadian covers of the Harry Potter books, but I thought I would just use this instead of my normal one and show you that I finished the Deathly Hallows. Harry Potter is always a sure thing for me, so of course it's 5 stars. And the more I listen to it and read it, the more I like them. Because I read some of the editions and I listen to some too, because Stephen Fry's version of Harry Potter is one of my favorites. And it is my most used audiobook on Audible. So the other thing that I listened to this month was all of these. I re-listened to the entire ACOTAR series from Sarah J. Maas. A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, and A Court of Frost and Starlight. I listened to them all. One of them in 1 day because I have issues. And yes, I listened to them, and yes, chapter 55 is very, very alarming when you listen to it. And my husband laughed at me because I was like blush-faced. It's one thing to read it, but it's another thing to hear it read to you. I think I've come to the conclusion that romance novels and sex scenes are not meant to be listened to out loud. Okay, so now that that big stack is done, I will move into the smaller stack of books that I was reading along the way. So the first thing I listened to after all this was Peter Pan, also read by Stephen Fry. It was a really good story. I tried reading it physically myself, but I have a learning disability that makes listening to classics difficult because the language, it doesn't seep into my brain. So I can listen to it just fine, but reading it always causes problems for me. And I read the first chapter of this and didn't absorb any of it. So I decided to try listening to it, and I found out that Peter Fry reads it, and it was, Stephen Fry, why I say Peter Fry, probably because Peter Pan. Stephen Fry reads it, and he does such a great job with the Harry Potter books that I was like, oh, it's gotta be good, right? It was amazing. I really, really enjoyed it. I can definitely see the Disney version in here, as well as Hook, the remade one, the one that has Robin Williams in it. I didn't realize they actually go, the backstory for Hook is really reliant off of the actual book, which I thought was really interesting. The way they portray Wendy, the way that Tinkerbell's just a snot. We knew she's a snot from the cartoon, but she's a bigger snot than you realize, and she is like what you think of for she's like the level of snottish that she is in Hook. So I don't know, they did a really good job with those two movies, integrating a lot of the actual story in it, and I really enjoyed it. I see why it's one of Murphy's favorites. All right, as far as the smutty books I read, these are them. I've been buying them off of thrift books for the last month and a half now. I am on book 5 of this series, 4 of the series, because this is 2.5. So I read book 1, book 2, and book 2.5. The stories are really cute. I really enjoyed them. Susan Mallory writes them all. So this one is Chasing Perfect. This one is Almost Perfect. And this one is 3 short stories. And the short story that she wrote is called Sister Bride. Okay, so there's 3 stories in here. And you have Susan Woods wrote Borrowed Bride, which was a terrible, terrible, terrible story. It's written about this girl who is getting ready to get married, and her ex-boyfriend comes back and steals her away. And there's cheating in it, and they treat each other like garbage. It's ugh. I hated it, and I was really worried about reading the rest of the story and the rest of the stories in here, thinking, oh my gosh, but I didn't buy it for that story. I bought it for the Susan Mallory story. So I moved on and read the Cheryl Woods story, which is called A Bridge to Dream. And I found that it was really cute. And then the story I actually bought it for, which was Summer Brides, was also very cute. And I really enjoyed the rest of the book. So if you read this, I didn't like the Borrowed Brides ones, but I liked the other 2 a lot. So I am still currently working on that series. I've already finished 1 in February, and I'm working on 1 more. So those will continue. The next book that I read was Prodigy by Marie Lu. This is the 2nd book in the Legend series. I have started the 3rd one, but I haven't made it very far because I got sidetracked by other things, which happens to me sometimes. I really enjoyed it. It's a good book. It's definitely a dystopian, and it's written in a world where all the polar ice caps, Antarctica, all the ice and snow melts, and then it starts to flood. And what happens in the aftermath of the flooding. Which is a mild spoiler, so I'm sorry if I disrupt anything. I mean, it's just a cause and effect thing. They kind of tell you what caused the Civil War to happen. And that was the cause of the Civil War, is that there was flooding in the United States, and there was flooding all over the world. Different parts of different continents disappeared, but the United States didn't handle it very well and became 2 factions that started fighting each other in a civil war. And these are all about the Civil War and these kids that are involved. One's a street kid, and one is a kid that is part of the government system, and it's their story. As I said, I've started the 3rd one, but I have not finished it yet. And the only reason I haven't finished it is because I don't know. I don't have a reason for it, I guess. I just haven't gotten to finishing it yet. I got sidetracked by other books. And I will show you when that book comes up on my pile, because I always start from the smallest and work my way down. And I can actually put a bunch of it right now, since we're talking about it. I read The Wicked King. This sidetracked me away from Champion. I actually read The Lost Sisters first. Lost Sisters is a little novella that goes between the 1st and the 2nd one, but to me, it was total garbage. That was like the worst thing I read, with the exception of that short story. So 2 short stories that I read were absolutely horrible. It was Taryn's version of The Cruel Prince and why she did what she did. And I don't want to say any more than that, just in case you have not read The Cruel Prince. But The Cruel Prince takes place in Fairy. It takes place with 3 girls, twins, Jude and Taryn, and then their big sister, Vivi. And Vivi is part fairy, and the twins are pure human. Vivi's mom escaped from Fairy when she was pregnant with Vivi, and it took them like 10 years or whatever it was. It was a handful of years for Maddox, her dad, to come find her. And when he does find her, he takes her, kills the parents, and takes the twins too. This is a continuation. I really have mixed feelings about this book. I was bored out of my mind for a portion of it, and then pissed off for the rest of the book. I didn't really care for The Cruel Prince all that much. I rated it 4 stars until I actually stopped and thought about it. I don't like books where I don't like any of the characters. And pretty much every character in both of these books is heinous, and I don't like any of them. And it makes it difficult for me not to like a book when I can't like any of the characters. And funny enough, the one person that everybody seems to hate is the only one that I like. It's the only one that I think has any redeeming qualities. So yeah, this one I gave it 3 stars. It has an amazing ending. I laughed out loud because I thought it was enjoyable and funny and horrifying all at the same time. But I did not like the little novella because all it does is retell the first book over again in 50 pages. And it does it from somebody else's point of view, but it doesn't do it, it's not in depth enough to give you any good new information, but it's really just a synopsis of the book. And so if you don't want to read the first book and you want to go right to the second one, just read The Lost Sisters and you'll get a synopsis from a different character's point of view. I don't know. So Lost Sisters, I'll put a picture up for you, was bad. It was very, very bad. This one, will I read the next one? Yes, because it leaves off on a massive cliffhanger and I want to know what happens. Am I enjoying them? Not really. Okay, so that's what monopolized my time, because my friends were reading it and they wanted me to read it too. So I went ahead and read it, and I still have not made it back to Champion yet. It's still sitting downstairs. The other books I read, I actually read at the very beginning of the month instead of the end of the month. So one of the first books I read this month was The Witches of East End by Melissa De La Cruz. I read this book because I remember loving it when I was, I don't know when this came out, like 10 years ago or something was when I first read this book, because I read it right after it first started coming out, and it was published in 2011. I have grown as a reader a lot, and this book annoyed me from beginning to end. I remember loving the story, absolutely adoring it, but the little twist in it made no sense to me. The writing was horrible, and I kept stumbling over what she was saying because she writes the longest sentences that make no sense. And I cannot figure out how they're not run-ons. Apparently, probably technically not run-ons, but they sound horrible and they make no sense. And it was bad writing. The story was kind of stupid. And I wanted to like it so much because I remember liking it, but everything I read from Melissa De La Cruz lately was horrible. And maybe I just have grown out of her writing style, which makes me worry. I mean, this is a library copy, but I know I have an actual copy somewhere, so it must be in storage because it's not here with us. I must have left it in the things that I was okay leaving behind. But I don't know. It makes me question whether I want to keep the Blue Bloods. I have the spin-off series. This is adult. And I have the YA spin-off series here because I wanted to read them. Because I remember loving this series, but I wanted to read this one first. And I have all 3 books and I've only read the first one. And I don't know if I'm going to read any more of them. I don't know if I'm going to keep any more Melissa De La Cruz books. I may just chuck the entire lot of them, which is sad. So now you've heard about a couple of books I didn't like. So let's move on to a couple books I did like. So I read the last Crazy Rich Asians book at the very beginning of the month. So this is Rich People Problems. And this is the concluding to the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. And it was really good. Again, the books have been hilariously funny. They are a satire on the rich Chinese culture. And they're kind of like Gossip Girls in Chinese. They're funny, they're witty, they have interesting characters, they are so much stuff all at once. And I don't know how to describe them other than that. They are hilarious. And it really makes you stop and think about the fact that maybe it's not such a great thing to be rich. Because, you know, when you're a kid, all you want is to have money. And when you grow up, if you have this kind of money, it might not be a good thing. But yeah, this is the concluding novel. It was amazing. I loved every minute of it. And these are quite long, believe it or not. They're kind of thin pages, and so we're looking like 550 pages here. And it was wonderful. I would love to hear what you guys think of them because I think I found a new favorite series. So the last book that I read was the Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy is about Simon. I don't want to say any more than that because up until recently, I knew it was about Simon, but I didn't know anything else, and I didn't want to say anything else. But they're all short stories. There's a bunch of them in here. Some of the short stories were really, really good. I don't think there was any bad ones in here, but there's some that I loved so much more than others, like anything with Magnus and Alec in it. I just hearted so much. But this was definitely much better than like the Bane Chronicles. The Bane Chronicles, all the stories for some reason are narrated by different people. In the Bane Chronicles, there was one narrator that was horrible. These ones, I don't think there's any bad narrators, but there was some that just weren't as good, or they were so good that I wanted to keep them. Like I just finished listening to Lady Midnight today, and Lady Midnight, the narrator was amazing. And I'm not sure I'm liking the one for Lord of Shadows just yet. But I really enjoyed this. It's so fun to be able to spend some time with Simon. And I'm really glad I read this, because if not, I would have been so horribly spoiled for for Lady at Midnight. And one of the girls was talking about the next set of short stories and how you find out stuff in the last book, and she spoiled me, which makes me a little annoyed. So I'm looking forward to reading the next set of short stories as well, just so that way I can keep up and not spoil myself anymore. But yeah, they were really good, and I'm very much enjoying. I was really tempted to give up Cassandra Clare after some of the books in the Mortal Instruments. Like, I really enjoyed the Clockwork books. I liked most of the Mortal Instruments books, but the only ones I really, really loved were the first three and the last one. And so I was really worried that I should probably give them up. This book and Lady Midnight are telling me, no, you still like them too much to give them up. But yeah, that's it. That's all 15 books I read this month. I cannot believe I have 14 of them in physical form sitting with me right now. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.